Welcome to the podcast Real Talk with Sudhanya. Today's guest is Miguel Baumann. He has been a serial entrepreneur, a corporate manager, and currently a certified leadership coach. He coaches tech leaders on personal growth and helps deal with traumas through deep work. Miguel is someone who has deep dived himself into his authenticity and shared his traumas and mentioned that it's always a work in progress. It's been a deep talk, and I hope it inspires you as much as it inspired me. Enjoy. Good to see you, and I'm so excited for today's talk because there are so many things to talk about serial entrepreneurship, about corporate managing. But the one that I'm most interested about is your leadership coaching. And you spoke about in your bio about authentic leadership. And hence, I want to start with the first question. And in this podcast, we dig deep into the topic. So I'm going to hit you straight. What was your biggest challenge in this journey of leadership coaching?
Yeah. Well, maybe if you take the topic of leadership as a whole to get started with, I think the biggest challenge for me was to let go of people. Let go of people in teams. Maybe that was in my role at Philips. There were people I had to let go. Some people because of reorganization. Some people because I figured out there might be a different, a better fit somewhere else. But also my startup, when that crashed, we had people in our team and we had to tell them we cannot pay the salaries anymore because there were mistakes that we made. I think that part was always the hardest for me to, to show up, to communicate, because I was also proudest of these moments when I was able to provide work for other people, that they get income, that there's families around that they can live from what we dreamed of, what we did together. So that the opposite was usually the hardest part, the biggest challenge on how to communicate that. Mm-hmm. And specifically was the communication around it, because in the first time I had to do that in my life, I just completely screwed it up. Like I was just a very bad conversation overall. And then I had some help from some communication coach on how to actually deliver such a message as well. So that was kind of a learning moment. And I share that as well a lot with my clients if they get into similar situations, how to deliver this information in the best way that you can care for the other person, but also stay strong on the points and the feedback you want to give.
How? Give us a tip.
So very practically, when you get that message, it shouldn't come as a big surprise. Like you should have given them feedback beforehand already that maybe things are not working out. Mm-hmm. And then if you come to the conversation itself, then tell them you're going to tell them some tough news. Then mm-hmm. Tell them right away, and mm-hmm. then give them space to react. Mm-hmm. And only afterwards give them maybe some explanations if they would like to know. Give them space for questions. Give them maybe also the underlying reasons why you did that. But first tell the news and then give them space. That's kind of the important
Don't
part.
Run around the bush.
Exactly, because they will be anxious anyways. If you tell them it's going to be tough news, they might see that coming. So just tell them and then take it from there, whatever comes up.
Oh, wow. That's, I think, a very honest and authentic way of being transparent. And you told me that you also coach other tech leaders, leaders in the technology space. But rather than on technology topic, although you come from a very tech background, you work with more how to deal with your mind through body. That was interesting. And I also read something called somatic healing. I have no clue. Tell me more.
Yeah. I think that also ties really nicely into the area of authentic leadership, is when you show up as your whole self. Mm-hmm. And that often means that your traumas and that your issues and your topics, wherever they come from, they also show up. And they usually show up when under pressure. So when you have pressure from your investors, if you're an entrepreneur, or if you have pressure from your managers, mm-hmm. From the leadership team maybe as well. that's when these things show up, right? And that's
Mm.
where that the work on yourself becomes really, really important. That's something that you cannot do in one afternoon. That's something that takes a bit longer time.
Mm.
And I have done obviously some work on myself as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do that work with others in regard as well. And I have found, and also like if you look at the topics of neuroscience, all the research done there, that there's so much happening, not just up here, but traditional, let's say, therapy and coaching focuses on, but there's so much connection to our body, to our guts, to our heart, like the nervous cells, etc., how that works together. That also the approach how we heal trauma, how we work with trauma, also has to have some sort of a connection to the body. That's the somatic part, the body, the embodiment of the work I do.
Wow. So tell me about your journey. How did you embody and connect with your body? First of all, how did you found out uh, how do you read your body, basically?
Yeah. Maybe you recognize that as well. For me, it started with I think 3 months of continuous headaches, like migraines, like crazy. Never had that before, but it was just after my first startup crashed, and I worked for a year, and I moved, and it was just craziness, and I just had headaches for 3 months straight. And that was actually the first moment I started to kind of connect to the body. And I went to many doctors, and they all gave me paracetamol because that's in the Netherlands what they do.
Yes,
Um,
they do.
right. And even after 3 months, they started the first time to take my blood pressure, not even the blood, just like the blood pressure. So I was like, okay, I need to do something different. So I went to a chiropractor as well, among other things. And she just said, like, Miguel, you don't breathe. I was just like, because of this tension, and that's also something later on I just learned, is that all structures, all on cell level, if there's stress, if there's tension, we freeze. That's one of the first mechanisms as well. So also my lungs, my whole body was just contracted. And that's basically the start of exploring some more. And I think it often starts for people who go through such a journey. It often starts with some sort of a break, a burnout, a situation where they realize, like, hey, I have to change how I have been living, and I want to, envision something different.
Yeah.
That was basically the start for me to listen to tuning, yoga, climbing, different sports, like all these kind of things, ayahuasca, kambu, like all kind of things of
Oh my God.
tuning in
I
with the
have so
body
many,
more. Yeah.
I have so many questions now with so many avenues. But I'll just take a step back because
Yeah.
we live in the Netherlands and we know that how much uh, hustle culture is celebrated, to go in the corporate ladder, be always in the mind, be very transactional, get the numbers. And that's the default way of being. And hence, another very buzzword is also burnout and all these, physical and mental challenges that we are facing. Um, which means that if the leaders are so stressed out, if the managers are at the management of all these big companies, for example, you had a startup, if the people who lead these organizations also convey this, that also has effect on the team, on the organization, on the employees. What's your take on that? How do you manage now since you know all these things?
Yeah, it's yeah. I think it's almost a responsibility, and I see it as a responsibility of every leader. And I think maybe that's also for you in your new role. That when you're having these leadership roles, you have a responsibility, and not only for the jobs maybe that are in your team, but also for how do you show up and what kind of culture do you want to shape in your team. Some leaders that just hand over the pressure they get from the managers to their team, and some are able to kind of like level that and then dose it a little bit in a different way towards their team. So I think it is absolutely responsibility for leaders to check in with themselves, like however they're going to do that, with meditation or otherwise, to really, to show up in a way that's real, that's that authentic part, authentic leadership, but it's also taking responsibility for your own topics, for your own things that show up. And I see that with myself. I have consciously stepped out of the rat race and leadership and at corporate leadership roles, and it still sometimes triggers me. Although I'm crazy happy where I am, sometimes I have these like moments of like, ooh, these old patterns, as I said, like the rat race, the kind of pressure, the stress, it still catches on. So that it's a continuous effort, I believe. Maybe you have a different view on how you do it, but continuous effort of what is important for me, what do I want to stand for, what are my pillars, what's my board, my base I want to stand on, what's kind of like, that's what I am, that's who I am, and that's how the way I want to show up, and then consciously shape and show up in a way that's you. And I mean,
yeah, and also that is I think it's just not a personal, for me, I feel it's just not a personal responsibility, because if you're the people above you, people around you are always into this rat race, it's infectious. That energy is infectious and you get into that. So it has to be a much bigger and a more social, even much beyond your, the job or the company. It's a much more social responsibility that I think, and hence I feel that what you are doing is so incredibly important in today's space.
Yeah, it's our whole society that has a certain aspect, and I think many mental challenges, mental health, stress, even physical stress, it all has an impact. And social responsibility, yes, and it always starts with yourself as well. So I think I can only impact how I show up. And with my clients, I don't have an agenda. I have their agenda, right? Like what they want to achieve. So there's no kind of like what I push on them. Absolutely not. And yeah, you need to show up in a way that how you like. What was this the saying? Like you are or be the change you want to see in the world, or something like that. I always like that. I think it really goes for leadership as well, because it is around that showing up in the way you want to. But what others you want to see. Maybe you can even impact your manager and your manager's manager, because they might be surprised at how you show up in stressful situations, how you manage that.
Wow. There are so many beautiful words, but now I want to know, Miguel, one level deeper. And that is, you told me that about trauma, and that you specialize working with others, which means you have dealt it with yourself. Would you like to share more about your own journey with trauma? What is to be in today's world, being a man, challenging the hustle, what it means to deal with your own trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see where we get here. That's always like talking about your own traumas. You always that's a different space, right? Than talking about a more theoretical, conceptual way. I think there were a couple of aspects, and there's probably more I'm addressing. One is definitely, how I grew up as a gay man in a straight world. That in itself is kind of like a traumatic experience, you can almost say. I never experienced that big trauma when we talk about PTSD, for example, or rape, or abuse, or like these big trauma, with the big T traumas. And at the same time, all these things we go through, many people go through, I went through, they still have an impact on how we show up. And one of the areas that made a big difference for me was how I relate to other people. I was an absolute people pleaser, because that was my trauma. Was when I show up as my whole self, nobody's going to love me. Nobody's going to like me. That was I believe, for the first 25, maybe even 30 years of my life. That was kind of the unconscious, sometimes a little bit conscious way of living. Just like, I have to hide myself. I have to be pleasing everybody. I have to be nice to everybody. That's when they like me. That's when I'm safe. That's kind of these connection I made unconsciously, because there was one part in me, the gay part, the feminine part, maybe even, that I didn't want to accept or be aware of or get in touch with.
And was it accepting yourself, or like to socially communicate that I have this feminine side on me, or I am gay, which was more challenging to accept inside or accept outside?
I think the internal part was way more. So I came out when I was 19, but the work continued for another 10 years, I would say, to fully accept. And maybe and I think it's even maybe a bigger question, but the being gay part, the feminine part of me, that is probably still a work in progress. Like I believe that accepting yourself 100%, knowing yourself, like that's the first step, but then also accepting yourself 100% for who you are. That's ongoing work in progress. I always learn more. For example, during the pandemic, I learned how much I enjoy staying home. How much I went as an introvert, how much I went over my boundaries continuously with extremely busy weekends. Now I'm much more conscious on, but it still feels weird sometimes. Like, how do I balance that? Saying no to certain things I know are just draining me completely. So I think that accepting myself is definitely the biggest challenge in that whole equation.
Internal battle.
Yeah.
Internal battle. And how much of it you feel it's due to social conditioning, because you told that the people pleasing, and I can really relate, and I think that many of us can relate. It's a challenge or a battle that we constantly have with ourselves, and maybe there is nobody actually immediately in our immediate surrounding who's expecting us. This is something that we impose on ourselves. Do you agree?
Yeah. Yes. Well, yes, we are doing that to ourselves. I think we are our, like that saying of we are our own worst enemy. I think that's absolutely true in that sense. And with trauma, it has always a history. Trauma, like or behavioral patterns, like my pattern of like I'm not showing up, I'm pleasing other people. I'm holding back. Like that's, for example, another thing. Like comes with pleasing. I'm not speaking my mind. I'm not saying what I want. I didn't even know what I want, like for a very long time. And these things all have served a purpose at some point in our childhood, usually. Like that holding back, not saying what I want, who I am, of that kept me safe. As a child, I'm dependent on my caregivers, parents, people around me. I need them. Like as a 3-year-old toddler, I have to. So I think it kept me safe back then. But today, I wouldn't need that pattern anymore, but it's still around because it's so ingrained in me. It's still hard for me sometimes to say what I want if I know other people, especially in a group setting. That's something I'm still working on, to be honest. If you talk about trauma, to say what I want in a group, if it goes against what everybody else wants, and
you feel
I have eternal dialogues ongoing, and so still working on that part as well. But I have the awareness that it's a challenge for me to say that. So I practice that, and people don't like it sometimes. And then the next step is being okay that other people don't like it.
right. And what can we do socially where, you feel that, okay, if Miguel, you were born in certain social condition where you felt that this whole process of handling your own battle would have been easier, what would you wish in your wildest dream that this social condition would be ideal for, something that we can dream for our future children?
Yeah, I think this big vision, that's maybe also part of, or not just part of, but the underlying theme of my work is like that everybody can be who they really are.
Mhm.
Me being gay and sometimes today I don't have nail polish, but sometimes I do, that's just okay, that nobody in the gym looks at me in a
Mhm.
weird way, but that people can also show up in their way, that we can respect that people say like things, maybe we don't like them, but it's okay because they're saying that, I acknowledge you're saying that, and it doesn't do anything, and then fine, okay, let's move forward. So people can be who they are and they get space for that, and then we get space in another place as well for ourselves, and that we manage that together. So the wish would be that everybody can be who they really are.
Why do you feel we have this, I don't know, phobia or this resistance towards just not gay, anything that is different from me, for example? We have today so many social challenges, right? From racism to sexism to so many challenges, and it's everywhere where we are kind of scared of anything that is different from the majority or me. There is this scare. Why do you feel that we live in such times?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very big question, and I don't really have a like big question demands a big answer, but what I think might be interesting to look at is one concept I always look at is shame. Like,
Mm.
what are we ashamed of? What have you learned to be ashamed of? And if you go back probably a couple centuries, we talk about, in the Western world at least, we talk about the Catholic Church having huge impact on creating the social norm of being a virgin, for example, for women, that already has in Rome 2,000 years ago, their roots, maybe even earlier. So it's we held up status, and that was usually constructed about around cisgender straight men. That's kind of like has been the norm looking at history, I think. So that's kind of like the origin of probably a lot, but in social terms, it might be more around shame and, as I said, fear. And I think that's something interesting as well, being afraid of what's different in us. It's just like we don't know it.
Because
So
it's unknown, we
yeah,
just assume that it's harmful, that our power is at stake, or I don't know, maybe um unknown is harmful, darkness is harmful, anything that is not like me is going to I don't know, eat away my species, kind of a
yeah.
instinct that we have, rather than exploring, like let's explore the
It
wide
takes
universe.
Yeah, it takes so much courage to, as you say, explore, to be curious, to show up in an open way. It takes so much strength in yourself,
Mhm.
because you're always battling for your self-worth. That's kind
Yeah,
of like what's going on. And if you take, for example, racism in terms of like black and white, um, if people with darker skin, black or brown skin, if I put them on the equal as white people, then the white people kind of lose. So I would be losing. So how can I accept that? So it's kind of like that concept that might be playing as well in many, many people.
yeah.
Um,
I'm very I can share my personal experience because I'm
yes.
a brown female working in, the Western corporate even. And I can really, really confirm that the glass ceiling exists.
Hmm.
How much ever hard I work, I know that all my life I had to work double hard, literally double hard, to earn wherever I am. And still, I cannot break through certain goals that I have, leadership goals I have. And um, and also this whole feeling of now I think it has also reduced a lot, but as a default you don't even know that it's a trauma. It's so sad sometimes when I look back that you have this huge inferiority complex that, oh, white men are of course better than me, I am the dumb one. Like, this is something that is ingrained
Hmm.
uh growing up, and that's what you see people around you. I'm like, oh, this is like normal, right? Uh, maybe it has a lot to, not maybe, I think it has definitely to do with the colonization and stuff. But when I come out here and when I started, finding my own identity, I realized that there is no difference. It's um yeah, of course, me, it's always me against me, or me, being a better version of me and what I aim to be. And hence, why should I treat somebody else differently, or why should I feel that I cannot do that? And that was an internal war, but then there is an external war also, where of course I face these challenges that even if I want, there is a social dogma that is present and that's unknown. And I believe that that also exists with being gay.
Yes, and if I wanted to, I could hide it. I never did, but I could hide it. You cannot, right? And that's the difference. Like,
Yeah.
if I walk hand in hand with my partner on the street,
Mm-hmm.
you hear whatever you hear. But we can also just decide to walk next to each other and nobody says anything. In
Mm-hmm.
your case, that these are like microaggressions or however you want to call it, that's continuously happening, probably. And
Yeah.
it adds up over time. And then
Yeah.
you get all the other things on top that happen at the corporate and how that looks like. I was challenging a company um, 2 weeks ago. They
Mm-hmm.
named the new CFO and the new CIO, and obviously they were old, white, straight men. That
Mm-hmm.
was just that was like, okay, so how are we looking at diversity on that level? It's a company of 5,000 people. There's one woman, of course, she's from HR in the board.
Yeah, that's
Like,
normal. Yeah.
that's the norm, but you had the chance to, because they're the kind of like a spin-off from a larger organization. So
Mm-hmm.
you had the chance to name two more people from the outside. Why do
Mm-hmm.
they have to be men and white
Mm-hmm.
and straight? What's going on there, right? Why didn't we opt for a little bit more diversity with that chance of setting a new culture?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's a challenge, and you have done amazing work, what I hear, on yourself as well, to show up and to own what other people maybe have thrown at you. You're just like, hey, this is me, and I deserve a place at this table and this seat. And that's amazing, also as a role model for so many other people, I
Yeah,
believe.
thank you. It's a long way to go, but indeed, somebody has to show up, and I think our generation is willing to do the work and willing to look back and look into our traumas, and willing to redefine masculinity, femininity. In fact, this reminds me, yesterday I was watching this Netflix documentary. It is called Beyond Men and Masculinity. And it talks about what it takes to be a man in today's world, and how, for example, being competitive, being aggressive, violence, action, this is all celebrated and all tagged to masculinity, and anything that has to do with sharing your emotions is supposed to be feminine and weak. Okay, fine. But the main message that I got from there is that what today's generation, especially males, uh, what they the number one trauma is disconnection from themselves, the
Mm.
disconnection from their feelings. And that leads to eventually these negative emotions, stress. So being a man in today's world, what is your take on, connection to yourself? Can you relate to this?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I can relate to that, to be honest. It's um well, I can, but maybe in a different way than you were anticipating. I never really thought about the differences between men and women, because maybe also because I mostly had female friends.
Mm.
Um, so that was for me kind of, I was fine on that end. But there was work for me to be done to really own that more feminine part. And I don't actually like when we talk about feminine and the masculine. I like when we talk about flow energy. That's more the feminine part, and the masculine is more the strong energy. And we all have both, right?
Yeah.
So and I think that's
I like that. Flow
yeah,
and
yeah. And if we use that to just be ourselves wherever we are, and I realized the more I got in touch with my feminine energy, it also allowed me to own that strong male energy more, to show up in different way, to kind of just feel strong in myself, not in ways I needed to prove to kick somebody or start a bar fight or whatever. But just to feel strong in my own body in that way, but also in the feminine side. It's kind of that, I see it also as we have that spectrum and we dance a little bit on that. But when we extend that spectrum on one side, we also extend it on the other side. And we kind of have a bigger range. We can work and dance and express ourselves in different ways as well. And I think that's where hard work to get there, but that's where the magic happens. That's where also the magic of authentic leadership happens. Like, why does a woman need to show up like in this male energy to be heard and seen in a meeting? No, let her make that point. Don't talk over her. Like, give her that space like everybody else gets as well. So there's so many things, and if we own our own femininity, and all men have that, or maybe they disagree now, but that's okay with me. Like we all have that part in us as well. And I saw in ayahuasca, that's maybe I saw like that the femininity in everybody. I saw that very visually in colors. And I saw that we all are feminine, and we all have like some men have this blue layer of around us. So for me, that opened up so much in terms of we all have that feminine energy in us, that flow energy. The question is, how much space do we give it? And if we, with everything, like if trauma or parts of ourselves, if we don't look at it, shame as well, if we don't look at it, it gets stronger, and it kind of needs an outlet in something else. And then we get riots like we had in Netherlands, like the past couple of weeks around soccer. I'm like, how is that even a thing? Like, how, why, where are we? But that's kind of the outlet of probably something you're not accepting in yourself, and it erupts in a certain way.
Wow. So,
got carried away here, sorry.
there are so many avenues because you spoke about ayahuasca. Maybe I'll interlink two questions. Through your trips, maybe ayahuasca, all the hard inner work, because I know how hard it is. So thank you for doing the work. I would really like to know, especially for this strong energy. I really like the term strong and flow. What's the root behind this, the shame? What's the deep reasoning that the strong energy isn't shame, or there is this aggression around being masculine? What could be the deeper reason behind this reason?
Yeah. It probably, I bring often things back to either the animal kingdom or like our earlier ancestors that sat around the fire and were hunting. And like the hunting part was part of survivaling, the fighting, the kind of the fight, flight, kind of just the strength was really important to survive. And it could be that from that area, just like the strength was more appreciated than the flow and the beauty. That is kind of like the fighting, the energy, that kind of womb energy is still more appreciated because it keeps us safe, but because we think it keeps us safe. It could be like the wolves, they all have this order, and the stronger you are, the higher up you are. What we might have forgotten is that there's also responsibility coming with it, not only privilege. So usually we take the privilege that comes with a certain position, but we do not accept that there's responsibility that we need to take with it as well. Yeah, that's maybe my lay answer to this very, very big question of where this
yeah, because I try to like also explore that where is this guilt, shame, this as a female, I feel a lot of this blame energy around, to blame, and also the shame, and always needing to be strong, and this anger around me. And then I'm like, I don't need to be. These are okay, when there is a situation, you be, but without any reason, just cooking up in your mind and being in that energy is not really healthy. And that's what I see in today's, I don't know, mainstream media, the kind of music we hear, the kind of movies and things that we watch that actually promote being in these energy. That's my personal take, by the way. And hence I feel that, okay, where is this? Why are we celebrating these energies? So whereas we can be in much more healthier, strong and flow states.
But it also takes much more strength, again, personal work you've done to accept that, to be okay with other things around you, to do it takes a lot of inner strength and safety and security that you can accept that in other people. I read something why it's sometimes uncomfortable to see people on the street begging for money or food or shelter. That can be so uncomfortable for some people, and I realize it myself. It sometimes just happens like, ooh. But it's also like that we get in touch with our own fragility, our own mortality, almost, in a sense of like, if things fall apart, if our role would fall apart. And that's why it's so important to find that inner strength. One of my personal trainers, he once said, like, everything can fall apart tomorrow. Like, he had lots of things happen to him in his life. Everything can fall apart tomorrow. The only thing you have is in you, that sense of stability and strength. Everything around you is just fake. All the insurances, and you never know what's going to happen. Like, this can all be gone tomorrow. So that inner strength, that's something that's so hard to cultivate and work on. And I think when I hear you've done a lot of work, but sometimes society is still grinding you down a little bit, and then you need to rebuild and kind of regroup again.
Yeah, tell me about your inner work. What's your favorite? I wouldn't say what impacted you the most. Which kind of work helps you to be grounded, to have that inner stability inside, inner security inside? What's your favorite?
I think, I have two. One is at yoga. I did that for a couple of years, then I stopped, and now I started again a couple of months ago. And I still have this one situation. I was like doing a headstand, I think. I was just like, I can't do that. And then they guided us in the class to do that. And all of a sudden I was just doing it. And I realized, like, upside down, I was like, how many things do I limit myself thinking I cannot do it? And with a little bit of help, a little bit of like guidance, and now do this, I can do so much in myself. That was one of the, of course, I fell out of the headstand when I was thinking that, because I was so excited. But it was just shifting so much for myself in how I perceive challenges as well. So I think that was a big thing. And the other one was regarding cold showers, going to the freeze lab, which is super healthy on multiple levels, but it also just helped me to, it's almost like what's happening in the body. It's just electrical signals, right? Basically being okay with discomfort. That's something I believe has also opened a lot for me.
That has a lot to do with breath work also, right? The cold showers, which you started in the beginning, that, your doctor said you that you're not, chiropractor said you that you're not breathing well. I think cold showers are amazing to get in touch with your breath.
Exactly. Yeah. Breathwork is amazing. Cold showers, cold exposure in general, however you do it. Um, meditation is also something that I just mind blowing, but many people say that until, and yeah. But I think the cold showers for me really just, instant connection to yourself, that focus, that letting go of everything else around you.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really beneficial as well to kind of kickstart a healing process.
And the one-off are the trips, the ayahuasca trip. Tell me,
Yeah,
maybe
of course. There's
a bit of fun thing.
yeah. Um yeah, so many things. I mean, you're in a trip for a couple of hours, 8 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. It's amazing. If
Did
you
you did it in did you do the ayahuasca trip in Netherlands, or you went to Latin America? Uh,
in the Netherlands.
in the
Yeah.
Netherlands.
Although it's illegal here, but there's
Oh,
places you
that.
yeah. um no, it's yeah, it opens up worlds to you that you didn't know. I woke up at some point with like my face completely wet because of tears and realizing like, oh, we're all gonna die. But that kind of gave me a different perspective on death as well, because I went through that phase of grief and dying, literally like I was sinking into the earth.
Mm,
Um, and like almost like dying, coming back in terms of, okay, so let's make sure that I enjoy this life as well. Like I
mm,
don't need to serve other people in terms of their expectations, but I can do what gives me joy as well. And I'm still trying to align my life. And sometimes I'm like, hey, Miguel, do you remember when you had that talking to myself with that wet face? Like, yeah, okay, so let's align and make sure that you live that life that's worth living for you on your terms, and not either your parents' indoctrinated things that still fly around
mm.
or other people's expectations, but just who you really are. And sometimes that's hard to figure out, but it's definitely worthwhile to do that work.
That sounds like a spiritual trip, like a spiritual awakening kind of as well. Are you spiritual?
Yeah, that's a big topic for me. I think at the moment I would say no,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's more in terms of I used to grow up in a very Christian religious family, and I said go to note to that, or say goodbye to that,
Mm-hmm.
um, probably 15 years ago. But officially, I just did that like 3-4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized like I'm still saying like letting that part go before I can embark fully open, or maybe something else, some other spiritual path, or whatever is waiting for me. Maybe I'm already on it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not realizing it. Who knows? Usually the things, like Steve Jobs said, the dots connect looking back and not looking forward. So, how
Yeah.
about you?
For me, I don't believe in religions, but I learn from all of them.
Mm,
And for me, spirituality, I am spiritual.
mm,
And for me, it is defining my rules my way
yeah,
and finding my path, and being comforted in the knowing that I'm just not this physical body or mind. I'm much more than that. And
yeah,
to explore that dimension in itself. Uh, just like there are coaches that help you learn, tech stuff. There are coaches who help you learn how to navigate that unseen dimension. I do feel there is a lot of resistance, just like rest of the world, that something that is not seen or cannot be proven, there is a resistance to even believe in it. But I have been meditating for many years, daily for maybe 6-7 years daily. And I have seen shifts,
mm,
like profound shifts inside. And I do believe that I can't say concrete, like, oh, I used to, I don't know, complain 100 times before, and today I complain 50 times. I can't give you the KPIs or numbers, but I can feel it. And
yeah,
That's what I call, like, if you want to label the word spirituality, for me, that is more of it, that there is no single way of being, and you have to find your way of being. And there is so much to learn from everyone, everything, everywhere. Uh, just you need to have that openness and curiosity to go deeper. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
in that way, yeah, I am spiritual.
Yeah. I think also that exploring of other areas, that's also what leads to more authenticity, because you discover more of yourself when you are exposed to different way of looking at the world, of different ways of thinking and talking and interacting. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, there's something in me that actually connects to that new thing. And you start discovering more about yourself. And with that, the authenticity you can show up with in the world
Yes,
later
and
on.
I feel that it is also very much needed what you're doing, I think, and also what because I'm also in the tech world for the last 15 and a half years. Um, it's so transactional and I would say to some extent superficial, all the gains and the accolades and the ego, like serving the ego thing. But that's all fine because we are here to also celebrate the material side of life. But also, it comes with so much of pain and suffering as well, in the sense that why somebody needs to have 3 months of headache, or why do we need to run after money whereas not really know how to relish it, enjoy it, or live from scarcity that, oh, let me work day and night so that I don't need to feel my feelings. Let me get drunk to core, because that is my fun, or the hookup culture. And I'm not against any of them, but are you learning and going beyond it? Because we are suffering so much. And it's from my personal experience. I have seen, for example, my mother, she has bipolar. And
Mhm.
I also, growing up, I saw the volatility of emotions and how it can totally break you, just not break you, the break the family. And hence, for me, it was like my personal mission also to explore the emotional side of being a human. And that's where I explored. And when I came to the corporate, a part of me was like, oh, I'm going to show the world that, I can do this, and have this, whatever accolades and stuff. But I also got grounded and got reminded of my real purpose is to connect with the humane side of beings. And hence, yeah, I do have a tech job, and hence I also give emotional intelligence workshops to um, these corporate folks, which I have really fun, because you get to dive into something which is very subjective, and everybody has their own world to explore. It's super fun for me to just navigate and see that, oh, where are we heading?
Yeah. And we all are human beings. Like if they're in tech and maybe they're not the most talkative people, or maybe they don't have that much access to emotions yet because of XYZ that happened to them, or
Trauma.
just exactly to trauma, or but they're all human beings and they all have the same need to be seen and to be connected and to be valued and to add something and to maybe um, yeah, leave some sort of a legacy. And we all have that in us. And if would give that and show that more to each other, I believe we would have less of that struggle. We would less of the racism, of the exclusion, of the eruption of violence. If we just see each other more in who we really are, I think many of the problems would just be at least cut in half. Let's put it that way, and be smaller.
I totally agree with you, Miguel, on that. So, on a final note, what's the ending note? And the question I can put across is that what's Miguel's legacy that you would like to leave behind?
Yeah, I would love to leave the world a bit more at ease with itself, and like just so people can, as I said before, like that people can be who they really are, that they can show up without being punished, looked at weirdly for who they really are. That's just okay for everybody. I think that's what I'm working towards, building, creating in different capacities.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think very much needed. So thank you for doing the work. Thank you for working on yourself. Thank you for helping us, for inspiring me to be vulnerable and to show yourself, to show up. And I know how, and that's why I told you my story. I know how difficult it is. And also for me to also reflect back that, hey, it's not always just that easy for a man. It's also challenging in a different way. And that's a very humbling, grounding, and you feel, you know, more at ease. That's your mission. You achieved that with me at least. So thank you for easing me.
That's great to hear. And thank you for having me and for this nice conversation. I think I have a feeling we could go on forever. But
yes. But